Welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, September 13th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the new congressional map that the Missouri Republicans have passed to net them an additional seat in the Missouri House delegation sent to Washington, D.C. Missouri as a state has been very interesting as of late, resulting with a new congressional map at the request of Donald Trump in the Oval Office, as they have come to this state and the Republican legislature where they have full and total control over the redrawing process in this state. Republicans were asked by Donald Trump to draw out an additional Democratic district, and so that's exactly what they did. On the national stage in the last election, Donald Trump carried the Republicans to victory in the United States Senate as well as in the United States House of Representatives. But the margin at which the Republicans have in the House of Representatives is arguably quite thin. It's one of the narrowest majorities we've seen in decades, and Republicans are just 3 seats shy of losing the majority in the next cycle. And so we knew that Texas redrew their map to benefit the Republican Party, put them in an additional 5 seats across the state, and now in Missouri, Republicans are set to net an additional House seat in this state. But that's pending the constitutionality of the state's district lines. What we found as of today is that there is now a process here in which the Democrats are going after this brand new Republican map on a variety of different legal bases. You found first that their clear-cut explanation is that mid-decade redistricting is illegal. The state constitution does not allow it, and it found that the state Supreme Court in 1955 said that only one valid apportionment is intended for each of the 10 years at which you find the redrawing process to be done. And so this is a very clear indication and precedent that says that this implementation of the map is not allowed to happen. But there's other legal problems with the map as well. The second part here is that the state constitution requires compact, heavy on the compact districts, comprised of closely united territory. There's a reason why Democrats are in Missouri with 2 seats instead of 0 or instead of 1. The map that was drawn was done under the boundaries and under the legal basis that was understood and respected by the Missouri GOP in the past. Yes, it was a gerrymander, but it was done to a point that still allowed Democrats about a fourth of the state's total representation. Now, they'd be cut down to just 13%. But what we're finding is that the old district here that, incorporated portions of Kansas City were in fact more compact. Missouri's 5th district did have closely united territory. But looking at this new map, look at how far out the Kansas City split goes. They take huge portions of the city and send it all the way over through Jefferson City and in the outskirts of Columbia, almost all the way over to the other side of the state. Fundamentally, this is at odds with the Missouri state constitution. But Republicans and Republican justices have often sided with their party time and time again. We've seen it in countless states where the Democratic, opinion and suing of the map does actually hold a lot of legal basis and legal reasoning. Oftentimes, you think about what the cases that Democrats are bringing forth. A lot of these things truly are cut and dry in state constitutions, but for the sake of partisanship, oftentimes these Republican judges, and sometimes Democratic judges too, do in fact make the case that makes it so the Republicans come out ahead. But here's the big one. The thing that is really, really damaging to the Missouri GOP, because this was such a rushed process. I'm telling you weeks on the time it took to draw these maps versus in 2020, after the census, months on end of deliberation, the map here has a huge problem. Unfortunately, one of the precincts in this state is assigned to 2 congressional districts, Congressional District 4 and Congressional District 5. And one of these apportionments and assigned in the congressional districts here is disconnected from the rest of the district, which is a huge no-no and not allowed to happen. You simply cannot violate continuity in a state. The Supreme Court will rule that as well. This map right now, as it stands, is plainly illegal. And Democrats are going to sue. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Missouri. Because we've seen cases where, as cut and dry as it has been, yes, Republican judges have in some cases pushed back against Democrats and said they're not going to shoot down the GOP map. But we actually have seen it in some cases work in favor of the Democratic Party. Since the 2020 election, we've seen that maps have been redrawn in different situations. We've seen that maps have been ruled left and right, and even in red and blue states where the maps were struck down for an individual and variety of different reasons. We could see it happen again in Missouri. In Maryland, it was a Democratic judge who struck down the partisan gerrymandering, right? We've seen that. In the state of New York, it was Democratic justices who did the same. In Ohio, it was Republicans who sided with the Democrats on that map, and you can find it in a number of different states too. In Alabama, a three-judge panel, all Trump appointees, ruled that the Alabama congressional map needed an additional district, otherwise it would be violating the Voting Rights Act. And so we have seen that there have been plenty of moments where even the safest of Democratic and Republican states have faced opposition within their own state by their own Republicans who strike down the map. And it results in a redraw, and in some cases, a court-mandated and court-drawn map, which oftentimes actually does benefit the party that is suing more than it benefits the incumbent political party, even if those justices lean in that direction. And so, yes, Republicans have netted an additional House seat with this Missouri map, but also the map may not hold up. There's another thing, too, that we talked about in terms of what Democrats might be doing to counteract the Missouri map. There is a possibility that if Democrats can garner 106,000 signatures from 6 out of the 8 congressional districts, they just need to add up and need to be, from 6 out of the 8, a certain number, 5%, I believe, or somewhere around there of the last vote, you're going to find that if Democrats can do that, the map that has just been implemented will be voted on statewide before implementation. And although Missouri is a Republican state, we've actually seen Missouri in years past, including the 2024 election, vote in favor of different Democratic policies, and we might see it happen again in 2026 with a conversation around this map redraw. And so thinking about Republicans gaining an additional seat, sure, it's noteworthy, but the fact remains, this map as is right now is illegal. This is the most egregious part of it all, that in the rushed process, Republicans simply overlooked the simplest and most basic rule of the redrawing process, which is continuous districts. And assigning a precinct to 2 districts means they will have 2 U.S. representatives. They will get to vote in a multitude of elections, and that is why it is plainly illegal by every metric. Congressional District 4 and Congressional District 5 cannot have the same group, and that is a huge thing here. And obviously, this was an oversight. This was not something intentionally drawn into the Missouri map, but it's something that you catch when you have months to deliberate and have this process be more fleshed out, and that's why you don't touch the map that has been working for you. What is this one additional seat really going to do? Republicans are already on track to lose the House majority, and although this one seat might mitigate an extra benefit for the Democratic Party, the legal battles that the Missouri GOP is about to go through and very well may lose this case and might actually lose it across the state could be very detrimental to them and ultimately just reject the notion that voters want this map to be implemented. Because what we actually found in Texas with polling data in the state is that only about 42% of the state supports redrawing the congressional map. Only about 42% of voters in Texas, when Donald Trump received 56% of the vote in Texas in 2024, just 42% are turning around and saying, I want Republicans to have 5 additional seats. But in a state like California, where voters are given that option to make the decision, about 54% of them want to see a newly drawn map that benefits the Democratic Party. And so we'll see. Right now, we are finding that the Missouri voters and the groups on the Democratic side are suing to block these GOP gerrymanders. And they call them unconstitutional because truly and honestly speaking, they absolutely are. And so whether or not the Missouri Republican Court decides to take this up, whether or not the United States Supreme Court decides to take it up, because the United States Supreme Court has often sided with Republicans and in some cases Democrats, where they say we aren't taking up partisan gerrymandering this is not something that is explicitly illegal in the United States Constitution, and therefore states are permitted to do so. They ruled that years ago. But now we are finding that this is not a case of partisan gerrymandering. This is not something, obviously it is, but it is not the legal basis as to why they're making the argument. Nothing here mentions partisanship. Nothing here mentions that, the map here is more Democratic than it is, or more Republican than it is Democratic. It is all about, simply put, the non-continuity, the non-compactness of the districts, and the violation of the state's Supreme Court. And whether or not the state Supreme Court agrees with them or not, something about this map has to change. And that singular precinct, which seems like a non-issue, is a huge oversight and one that could really do in this map. And so we will see exactly what the status is of the Missouri Dems trying to sue the Republicans on this map here. My honest take is that right now, because this map has passed, the best bet for Democrats is to go through the referendum process, which it looks like Missouri Republicans are trying to change as well. But, no guarantee that happens. But if they see real threat of it prohibiting the map from being implemented, they very well might do it. The Missouri Republicans are looking at this and saying that they realize that this is something that was a rushed process, and they thought it was fine. They never published an electronic file of the map that is typically done before the map is voted on. That way it allows people, all interested groups, to look at the districts, look at how they've been drawn, make arguments, make slight tweaks and changes, and this would have been caught from the very beginning had it been public. But because they wanted to do this behind the scenes, and they wanted to do it behind closed doors, and they never wanted it published online until the map had passed, it's a huge oversight that could have been caught at the very beginning. And then maybe the legal basis around the map and the argument to sue and take it down would be tremendously different. So as it stands right now, this Missouri map, I don't think, will withstand the test of time. Maybe we'll find a very different take on it from the Missouri Supreme Court and, the United States Supreme Court, which is still a possibility. But as it stands, it's pretty clear and very cut and dry as to how this map is illegal, why it is illegal, and ultimately why we are going to find that it is likely that this Missouri map is deemed unconstitutional and required a redraw, as dictated by whichever court decides to take it up first. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom, top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.